Welcome to another Word of Torah. I'm Rod Bryant along with Moshe Abrahams, and we are so excited, loaded for bear. We're ready to have a class, and we're in the 7th chapter, Sheva, and we're going to go on to study Torah. A lot of you people have reminded us, a lot of you guys have reminded us how much you appreciate the class. Make sure you subscribe and like our videos. It helps us a lot. Even maybe leave a comment. If it's a naughty comment, send it to Moshe, not to me. And you also can get a hold of him at mosheteaches@gmail.com, or you can go to his YouTube channel, which is very easy to find, youtube.com/word of
Torah. I felt like it was going to be Wheel of Fortune.
I'm getting really good at this. I should do this for a living.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get moving into the class.
Okay. So, absolutely. Just as you said, we're in chapter 7. We're in verse 17. So we have Yod Zayin. Yod is the 10th letter of the alphabet. Zayin is the 7th letter of the alphabet. I've forgotten how to speak. Vayehi hamabul. And it was the flood. Arba'im yom al haaretz. 40 days on the land. Vayirbu. And so, we often hear Rav. Like the Erev Rav was the mixed multitudes that came out of Egypt with the Israelites. And you also call, you can call your religious leader Rabbi or Rav. That comes from the same root. It's an honorific, so it means great. So here, this is the verb, because every word in the Hebrew language comes from a verb.
Mm-hmm.
This is the verb which gets you to great or many. This is, your Rav is to increase. So, Rav, Rabbah, Yirav would be he will increase. Yirbu would be they will increase, because this plural vav on the end pluralizes whoever's doing the verb. And the vav here is, and the vav here is a tense flipper. So it means it increased. They increased. What did? Hamayim. The waters increased. Vayisa. Now, we've discussed this before. This is a special. I like this verb because there's actually a weak letter missing. There's 2 weak letters in Hebrew, a nun and a hey, that can just randomly go missing from a word. And the nun normally goes missing from the beginning. The hey normally goes missing from the end. So this 3-letter verb root is NASA. And Robson Houston. So he knows all about NASA. What do NASA do? They schlep stuff up into the sky. So NASA means to,
now that Elon Musk is around.
Oh yeah, they've finally got some competition. So NASA is to lift up. So that's how you remember it. NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. They're schlepping stuff up all the time. Right. And so NASA is to lift.
That's their new model. NASA schlepping things in space.
Yeah. Since Mordy took over, they're using a lot more Yiddish over at NASA. Yeah. So Yisa would be he will lift. Yisu is they will lift. Vayisu is they lifted. So it's the waters still talking about. The waters increased and they lifted et hateva, the ark. So the ark is finally lifting off of the ground. This huge boat. I was discussing the proportions of the ark the other day. So the units are an amma. An amma is like a forearm, and it's 300 forearms long. And I was thinking, I can never imagine, because I can't imagine a forearm just floating. And I was like, oh no, you could do it if you got 300 lads to touch tip of the finger to the elbow of the other one. Imagine a queue of how long that would be if each one was a forearm apart. That's how long the teva is.
And think about this: what if they were part still very huge men during that time? What if they were born very big, like we hear of Moshe and Abraham being very big men, capable of fighting battle by themselves?
Yeah, you make a point, because we talk about Keziah as being a measure, which is like an olive, but it also says in the Talmud, but the olives were much bigger in those days than they are now. So we talk about, like, it's not just it's like a decent size, more like an egg, and the eggs are bigger. But we even have that from the stories of when the spies went into the land, at the end, after leaving Egypt, before the 40 years, they went into the land and they scoped out the place. And when they came back, they had a bunch of grapes that 2 men had to carry on a pole.
Right.
So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Look,
It may not
I
be.
would have not been able to. I can't even envision grapes that big, first of all. But second,
Yeah,
I was in Hawaii a few years ago in Kona, and there are avocado trees all over the island. And
right.
those avocados were as big as grapefruits.
Wow. Yeah.
Like this big.
Yeah.
I actually bought one, cut it. I couldn't even finish half of it. I mean, it's like eating 5 avocados here. I mean, our avocados are
Yeah.
little
Yeah. Yeah.
small, dainty things, you know. So
Wow. So
it's
that
going to
scale
happen
is very
again one
important.
day, God willing.
Based on modern forearms, though, there is a guy in, I think, Holland. I think he's in Holland,
Okay.
who made a replica.
Oh,
And so I was able to grab you up on the internet and have a look. Life size no, here we go. Replica in the Netherlands. Yeah, so he's in Holland, and it really gives you a sense of the
oh,
thing, right?
that is big.
So he apparently has done this by the measure of the Torah, although it looks like much bigger than I would imagine when I'm thinking about forearms.
Well, when you look at the people down there, my
Yeah,
goodness.
it's supposed to be 50 forearms wide, so you can imagine 50 lads standing elbow to fingertip. That does seem about right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you
And
took
look, and the
that,
thing is, it's as big as a modern ship that you would see in shipping.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, we've discussed before, okay, so what are we talking about in terms of animals? He has put some dinosaurs in here, which is quite fun.
That's good.
But we discussed this, how do you break up, how detailed do you break up these animals? Because, I think there's like 40 species of viper. So I
Right.
don't think we're going down to every subclass, everything like that. There's a
Right.
little
Right.
giraffe up there. But you can have types of animals. You
Right.
can have your ungulates and your predatory cats. You could break it up into fewer things and have representatives from all the
Right.
kinds of creatures. But yeah, it's obviously in part a miracle to have an object this big,
That is amazing.
but made by 4 lads over 100 years. You can imagine getting to the end of that
amazing.
project. But it's interesting every now and again to just check in with that as a definition and get some sort of sense of it. So this teva has just lifted off v'taram, and so this, you notice that before the waters were in the plural, they're in the masculine or neutral plural. So you had yirbu, you had v'yisu, but then it switches here. You have v'taram. Now room is also to rise. But when it says v'taram, that's the feminine. What's feminine here? The teva. The boat is feminine.
Which goes back to the feminine always ends up referring to something about goodness and mercy and salvation, or elevating.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there's also another dimension which I just realized recently. You and I were talking about our hero, Rabbi Foreman, Rabbi David Foreman. And he, of course, makes this beautiful link between the creative process in Genesis and the destructive process in Noah, and how many of these processes are the reverse of each other.
Right.
And so there are certain words which link them together, like, for example, after God split the Adam into male and female, he closed it up afterwards. Right? He kind of closed the flesh up afterwards, and it was v'yisgor. And then when all the people and animals go into the ark, God closes the door afterwards, and we use that word again, v'yisgor. And just as God separated man into male and female and sent them out into the world, God gathers all the animals, male and female, together and puts them back into the ark. So just as God and the earth birthed all of the life, it's all going back into the ark. So then we can think of her as being this, safe, pregnant space during the flood, and then birthing everything back out again. So it really makes sense that she's referred to in the feminine, because there's this quality of carrying and protecting life and then putting life out into the world just like the earth is referred to, haaretz
Right.
is a feminine word as well. So, yeah. And now we have the kind of escalating. This is verse 18, Yod Chet, Yod being the 10th letter and Chet being the 8th letter. You can see how if you put the Yod on the other side, the word is Chai, which is life. This is why we tend to give charity in groups of 18, because it's like a little reference to you giving life.
Right.
So we're in verse 18, V'yigbaru. Now, just like in the previous verse when it says V'yirbu, Rav means to be great or many. Gibor means, it can mean a gever is a bloke,
Mm-hmm.
a gibor is a champion, and it's about strength.
Right.
It's about, so in this case, because it's a verb, it's about them strengthening. So yigbor would be he strengthened. Yigbaru is they will strengthen, and the vav flips it into the past. They did strengthen. What did? Hamayim, the waters strengthen. And we have V'yirbu again. But the first time it was just Yirbu Hamayim. This time it's V'yirbu Ma'od, very much. So they're increasing and escalating. It becomes stronger. Al Haaretz, on the land.
Right.
V'teled. Oh, sorry, excuse me. V'telech. I was thinking she gave birth. V'telech, and she went. Hateva. The Teva went. Al Panei Hamayim, on the face of the water. And of course, that's also a phrase from Genesis. It's like the second verse of Genesis. It says, Ruach Elohim marachefet al panei hamayim. The wind of God hovered over the faces of the water. So there's loads and loads of phrases like this. Just simple phrases which come up, but they come up a lot between the two. Just keep on tying them back together. And then here we have a shift. We have Yotet, the 10th and the 9th, so 19. Hamayim Gavru Ma'od. It says it's becoming strengthened again, but this time it says Ma'od Ma'od. Do we ever get a phrase Ma'od Ma'od in Genesis? Yes, we do. Yes. Because God keeps on inspecting things while He's creating things, and the last time He inspects everything and declares that it's good, He says Tov Ma'od Ma'od, which is an unusual phrase, but it comes up in these. I know I'm really hammering home the point, but there's just so many times that these two.
It would be interesting to go do a deep dive on the occurrence of those two words and the reflection or understanding behind it. That would really
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly in the case of Genesis, each day that God declares that it's good, He says good. But He says Ma'od Ma'od at the end, where it's not only the end of all the days, but it's also the end of the week, and we're moving out of this phase of creation. So He's really like emphasizing the point. So V'hamayim Geberu Ma'od Ma'od al Haaretz, the waters strengthened very, very on the earth. Vaikusu, and this comes from one of the words to cover over. So, and they did, like still referring to the waters, cover over kol haharim, all the mountains, gavohim. Gavoha means very high, so all the high mountains are now completely swamped in these waters. Asher tachat kol hashemayim. Is that a phrase that we get in Genesis? Yes, it is, because God divided the waters above and below, and so one of the waters above were hamayim me'al harakia, and the waters were below were hamayim mitachat hashemayim. Mitachat harakia, and later on that gets referred to as the Mayim Me'al gets referred to as Hashemayim, and then everything else gets described as being below Hashemayim. Takat Kol Hashemayim. So I'm going to stop harping on because there's too many now to reference. But we have arrived at Kaf. Kaf is 20. So in the counting for the first 10 characters, we count up. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and so on. When we get past the 10th letter, we start going up in tens. Kaf is 20, Lamed is 30, and so on up until we get to 100. So, we've just talked about Amma, and we've got an Amma here. We have Chamesh Esrei, so 5 and 10, 15. Amma, 4 arms. Mi Ma'ala Givru Hamayim. So we're talking about that the water is this many ammas. Now, if I went up my wall here in this room, how many forearms would it take me to get to the top of this ceiling here. I'm sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I reckon it'd be about 8 of them, possibly.
I think that's a pretty good call. So if it's 8, then we're getting close to 2 stories high.
Why don't you
Right?
get out there and do that? Get a ladder.
Yeah. I'm tempted.
We'll wait here, though.
That makes some pretty good watching, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll catch you when you fall.
The only problem is I don't have enough forearms. I'll get some friend rounds. We'll have a measuring party. So it's 15 forearms from to on top of Givro in strength Hamayim. So the water is 15 in strength over the top of the mountains. Vaikesu, and they covered Harim. So think about the tallest mountain you can think of at that time. May have been Everest, may have been some other mountain we haven't heard of, which isn't there anymore because things have shifted around.
Right.
But over the top of that, 15 more, 2 stories more over the top of the tallest mountain. So in itself, it doesn't sound so much for a flood, but you're starting from the top of a mountain. So we're talking pretty far up. And this is a word I want to just take a minute to take a deep dive on. This is a really important word. Vayigva.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So this word here, I have an explanation for. It's to expire, die, perish, give up the ghost, yield up the ghost, be dead, be ready to die, to expire, to be about to die. This is an ex-parrot, right?
We were thinking the same thing. I was ready for you to say he's pointing for the Fiats. Pointing for the Fiats. Okay, go ahead.
So what's unusual about this is normally when we say to die, we use mot. That's the common one. That's one we hear a few times. Especially when we're doing begatting, we heard it 50 times in one line of genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
And this word doesn't come up that often. It comes up surprisingly rarely. And so I'm going to grab this word and we're going to have a deep dive, which you talked about doing a deep dive on the a minute ago. We're going to do one here, and a good way to do it is to go into your Safaria, right? Take your word that you want to use, and drop it in the search function, right? So we're going to drop that. Now, I don't care whether it has a tense flipping vav or not, but I'm going to search first with it as it is. I'm going to take off the vowels because maybe it's in a slightly different form. This will get me all of the yigvas,
right?
Even if the vowels are slightly shifted because of some sort of grammar reason. I'm just going to do a search there.
Type in the root in, right?
Yeah. So it's given me 10,006 plus references in Safaria, but I only want the ones that are in the Tanakh. So I'm going to click on Tanakh for my sources, and it's going to give me 6. So from 10,006 down to 6, that's pretty good limiting factor. You can see there's 297 in the Talmud. But what does God reserve this word for? Let's pop it in chronological order. So first of all, we have it in 721, which is where we just got it from. Mm-hmm. So the first instance of this word in the Torah is right here where we found it here, right? 721. The second is in 25:8, which is in the story of Abraham. Then we have 25:17, 35:49. We can ignore Job. Let's just look at the Chumash, the 5 books of Moses. So there are actually only 5 instances. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, so the first one, this is the word death. And it's v'yikva kol basar haromes al haaretz, and all of the flesh, all of the life that crawled on the earth died. Ba'of ubehema uvachaya, from the flying things and the big mammals, uvakol hasheretz, and all the crawly things, sheretz al haaretz, that crawl on the earth, v'kol ha'adam, and all the humanity. So we've got this one word referring to every kind of breathing life on earth dying. In Genesis 25, who does it refer to? Vayigva vayamat Avraham. And Abraham died and died in two different verbs. Beseva, in a satisfied age, Beseva Tova, in a good old age, Zakain, old, Vasaveya, and satisfied, via Asef Elamav, and he was gathered to his people.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, Abraham is being compared to all. The loss of Abraham is like the loss of all life on earth, right?
Right.
Who does it refer to in the next case? 25:17. Not long after, from verse 8 to verse 17. Ve'ela shenei chayei Yishmael, and these were the years of the life of Ishmael. Ma'at shana, 100 years, ushloshim shana, and 30 years, v'sheva shanim, and 7 years. So 137 years. V'yigva, this is our word. V'yamat, and he died, V'yasaf alamav, that same phrase as it used for Abraham, he uses for Ishmael. Yigva v'yamat v'yasaf alamav. He breathed his last and he died and he was gathered to his king. So Yishmael is the second. Who is in 35? In 35:29, it says, V'yigva Yitzchak v'yamet v'yasaf alamav. And he breathed his last and he died and he was gathered to his king. That same exact phrase.
Right.
Zakain v'seva, old and satisfied yamim, satisfied in days. V'yikberu oto, Esav v'Yaakov. And they covered him over, they buried him. Esav and Yaakov Banav, his sons. So these two fighting, warring brothers came together to bury him. Right?
Right.
What about this last instance in Genesis 49? So in the last instance, Genesis 49, V'yikal Yaakov letzavot, and Jacob completed to instruct or to command et banav, his sons. Via asof raglav, and he gathered his feet, el hamita, to his bed. V'yigva, and he breathed his last, v'yasef el amav, and he was gathered to his people. So I think that's hugely significant, because not only are these patriarchs worth as much to us as all life on earth, but Ishmael's in there.
Right.
I think it's really important. A lot of the times people like to refer to this guy or that guy as a Russia. We should be much more respectful.
I agree.
Because Ishmael, he played about when he was a kid. He jostled and he teased his brother.
Right.
Who hasn't done that?
Correct.
Who hasn't made that mistake? But the Torah doesn't rule out somebody's chance to be a tzaddik just because they got something wrong when they were young. We have great tzaddiks who did things wrong. And it's so important for us who get so much more wrong than someone like Ishmael,
Absolutely.
not to think of ourselves as a rasha, but to think of ourselves completely capable of being a tzaddik. Because if you don't think you're capable, you won't even try. But
Right.
you can be a great tzaddik. You can't do it alone. You've got to do it by aligning yourself with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, with the Borei, the Creator of the universe.
Right.
But how beautiful a way to subtly liken them to greatness.
And think about the value of everything that is created. Not just man, but everything is created has this intense value because everything serves the Holy One.
Yeah.
And that means that every individual, and I guess that's one of the things, maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I'm tired of, the Russians this and the Chinese are this and that's that and this, and I'm sure they all do their stuff, but deep within all of that, I do believe that the redemptive era will come when we recognize the value of every human being in this world, and where we smash our missiles into trucks and cars to haul vegetables and fruit all over. I mean, you really think about that, and that's really the crux of the matter. As I was listening to that, I'm thinking, like, what are they saying? Now, I do have the question about why the choice of the word die and die, two different ways of saying it. One is like giving out of the last breath, which would be the breath that is within us, and the other seems to be the soul that leaves. I don't know. I'd be interested in do a study, but
Well,
you nailed it.
absolutely.
You were really, really good at that. I really appreciate it.
Well, there's this thing that we're different from all the other life. You know,
Right,
we have our physical animal body that's made from the dirt and brought up, you know. But
right,
we also have the breath of God. Like God breathed into the nostrils of Adam, and that started this whole train, you know. And that's
right.
fundamentally, this is why, you know, animal rights are important, but they can never be compared to human rights. You
No,
know, we have to remember that we are different from everything else. We're B'Tselem Elohim, we're in the image of God. And so, what about when you become like such a high tzaddik like Avraham? It's almost like you have the moat being the death of the body, and then you have the yigva, which is the leaving of the breathing of your last. You know,
your
the
last breath.
breath of
Yeah,
God is
yeah.
going back to the divine. You know,
Right.
but but how cool is it to be so close to God that He decides to mark your life and death differently in His book? It's like, wow,
And
that's such an
also to put
honor.
a
Oh,
great period on the end of that by saying he maximized his life. Like
oh yeah. Like
like this was
satisfied of
when he
years. Oh,
left, it
it's
was his eighth day, right? Does that make
right,
sense?
right.
Like he
Yeah, like his
elevated.
7 days of creation, and then he was
Right,
yeah.
right, right. Well,
Beautiful.
this looks I think we're at the yeah, we're right more right in time for the end of the class.
Yeah, we're getting
'Cause
better, aren't we?
you are getting really good. You should do a podcast. I'm trying to encourage you to do one. So, well, this has been fantastic. We're going to have to go. Just want to remind folks, if you want to get hold of Moshe, you want to go to mosheteaches@gmail.com or go to his YouTube channel. You've got to go to the YouTube channel, and that is youtube.com forward slash
Forward
word
slash
of
Word of
Torah.
Torah. And make sure you subscribe to the NETIV YouTube. There's so much. You have so many like great minds on the NETIV. You can just go through, digging through, just keep on finding more and more and
Hundreds
more.
of videos.
So
As a matter of fact, all of these videos here I will end up putting on YouTube as a page that says Word of Torah, so people can go
oh
straight
yeah,
there and watch
great.
every video in one place. So
Yeah, fair.
it'll be good. Okay, until next week, same time, same bat channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. Send us a note. We'll say shalom, shalom, guys. Bye.
It's